Right, well, good afternoon members and welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting. The first item on the agenda for today is apologies for absence. Are there any apologies to be noted?
Apologies from David Cheetham and Peter Elliott.
Thank you. The second item is declarations of interest. Members are requested to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest and or other interest not already on their register of interest in any of the items on the agenda and withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time. Do any members have any interest to declare?
Yes, Chair. My wife will be speaking and I feel that I'm probably predetermined, so I will be leaving the room during the first item on the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey. Third item on the is declaration of predetermination. Any members who cannot determine an application solely on the information presented to the committee at the meeting today is asked to declare that they are predetermined on that item on the agenda and to withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time. Do any members have any predetermination to declare? Apart from Councillor Lacey, who's already made that clear. No? Thank you, members. Right, item 4 on the agenda. We now have the minutes of our meeting held on Tuesday the 3rd of December 2024. Are we happy that they are a correct record and can we agree them by acclamation? Yeah.
Whichever.
All those in favour? Thank you very much. Right, we now move on to the main part of the business for this afternoon. Item 5, NED/00303/FLH, Kilmarsh. The first application is in respect of 41 Roseway, Kilmarsh. I'm now going to hand over to Ken Huckle to do a presentation on this application. Over to you, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll speak briefly on this and run through a few slides after a few introductory remarks, and then continue through the slide pack at that point. The proposal is for extensions, additions and alterations to raise the ridge height and reduce the size, and also raise the eaves height at 41 Roseway, Kilmarsh, pursuant of 19.00591 FLH and 18.01153 FLH at 41 Roseway. The policy guidance in the local plan for this application is policies LC5 and SDC10, and further guidance has come from Successful Places planning document. The application is determined at committee as a result of council member calling. Site is a detached dwelling within the settlement development limit of Kilmarsh and was previously occupied by a single detached bungalow. And if we can just pause at that point, just to illustrate first of all, in the wider street scene of Kilmarsh, you can see it's at the end of the cul-de-sac there with the rear of dwellings to the north and the rear gardens of dwellings to the north, and that's seen in greater detail on the second slide, which is there. The location plan also shows that in the normal graphical form that we would expect, and the next shows the block plan of the original dwelling on site, which was a single story bungalow, which was relatively small in size, and the next shows the proposed block plan for this application. And there it's important to note that it's been extended to the north, the west and also to the east with the atrium. In addition, note the extended garage to the furthest east side of the plot. This shows the plans of the previously approved application. So to make this clear, this is no longer on site and was the result of application 181153, which was approved and proposed the situation that you've got there, which is related to the proposal that we have in front of us. Next slide shows the floor plans, and then the next slide is the current proposals in front of committee this afternoon. So as I've said, it forms the modification of a previously approved application for extensions and alterations to a dwelling. A single storey bungalow, which was shown in the slides, was the existing situation on 18/0/1153, and then 19/00591 amended that further. However, the approved plans were not constructed on site, and the explanation for that being there were some physical problems with the construction of steels in order to create the suspended roof and additional area in the roof space. As the previous two applications are approved, they are a consideration within your deliberations, and whether these changes in dimension and appearance on this new proposal are acceptable. For completeness, the dimensions are as follows. They are in the report, but I think it's worth reading them out for committee. The height to the ridge previously approved was 6.4 metres and as built is 6.6 metres. The height to the eaves is 2.4 metres and as built is 2.8 metres. The length was 19.8 metres and as built is 17.3 metres. The width is 8.7 metres and that remains unchanged, and the atrium is 2 metres protruding from the elevation to the front of the property. The volume as built, which is not in the report, is 586.99 cubic metres. The volume as proposed was 585.68 metres. So for completeness, we'll also include the garage in this. The ridge of the garage previously approved was 5.2 metres, as built is 5.4 metres. The eaves 2.6 metres, as built are 2.9 metres. The length 8.9 metres and as built is 6.1 metre, and width 8.6 metres and as built 5.3 metres. This results in the volume of the garage as built being 298.51 cubic metres, and the volume of the garage that was proposed on the approved plans 134.17 metres. It is accepted that there are larger dimensions on some elevations, certainly on the ridge and the eaves, and some of the photographs will show that in context in a moment. But the overall mass of the dwelling itself is approximately 1.5 cubic metres more. It is not considered, when checking against the 45-degree rule set out in the successful places document, that this increase in height results in any additional overshadowing to that previously approved, and that while additional roof lights are added, these do not add to the potential for additional overlooking. It is also accepted that the same can be said for the garage, although it is accepted that there is a materially larger increase in that, which is far in excess of the one for the dwelling. In terms of appearance, it's not considered that additional harm results from the changes to the dimensions in terms of the appearance of the dwelling within the street scene, and therefore officers have concluded an approval to the revisions to the design. I also want to draw your attention to the late reps that we've had from Councillor Baker, and there is a number of comments made, mostly around the windows and the as-built situation. When officers went out to site, we measured the eaves and ridge height from ground floor level, as opposed to in terms of relative to anything else, so that the measurements are accurate from ground floor rather than to anything else. And just to go through the pictures so as you can see the situation on site finally. This is the view from Rose Way. So you see it, you're looking north at this point at the end of the cul-de-sac. The next is the front of the dwelling showing the atrium. And this is when viewed from the west from a domestic garden. This is a photo from an objection that was received with the application. This one shows the garage in relation to the neighbouring property on Rose Way. And the next set of views are all, well, this view is from Rectory Road, which is the street to the north. And the following two show the relationship to the rear gardens and neighbouring properties. This first one is quite a bit lower down. That's a patio, and the garden slopes up there. Note that the wall, which is 1.8 metres high, is included as part of the scheme. The next one shows I think this is the best view from the north. You can see it quite clearly, and quite clearly how it appears from the rear of the dwellings. And finally, the red lines on this show, it's the same photo, but the red lines on this show the previously approved eaves line and ridge line. Because I'm working on a photo on this, I can't tell you that it's millimetre accurate, but it's as close as I can manage. And that concludes everything I've got to say, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Right, we've got two speakers on this application. The first one being Councillor Carol Lacey. So if you'd like to come up to the speaker's chair, please, Carol.
Thank you, Chair.
3 minutes when you're ready. Thank you.
From Wendy Spencer. I can't believe the size, height and length of this building. It isn't going to be a nice family home. It looks more like an office building. It's approximately 1 metre from the bottom of our garden and very close to the neighbours. We keep our curtains and blinds shut in the day now. There are 12 windows which look straight into all our bedrooms. On the other side there's 9. Workmen have been working on it all week and weekends. The roof is now complete. The building stands out and doesn't fit in with the rest of the estate. Myself and my neighbours hardly used our gardens last summer as we don't feel comfortable sitting outdoors. We're overlooked and feel like we're being watched. My 3 neighbours, Pete Cattell, Sylvia Morley and Lisa Morton, have sent letters in to you and emails. However, none of these neighbours have received letters about any of these meetings, only me. I'm going to refer to Policy LC5 Residential Extensions, which says they will be permitted provided that the proposals avoid significant loss of privacy and amenity for the residents of neighbouring properties. Also, there's environmental quality of light pollution, 8.67, which affects people's right to enjoy their property. The proposals for the development will only be permitted provided that they create good design. or protect the amenity of existing occupiers. I disagree that these plans are acceptable. The residents are very upset. It doesn't feel as though anyone's actually been on site to look at the thing that people have to look at day in, day out. Photographs will not do it. If you can't stick to the planning that you apply for, then I believe you should have to come back and start all over again. Everything's nearly finished, and he's kept working, and the residents on Rectory Road are very, very angry about this. This should never have been allowed, and I think that residents have been severely let down by the planning office. It's an eyesore. It's not going to even be occupied by him when it's built. He's leaving the country. So who's going to be accountable if something goes wrong? I'd really like some answers on this. It's not acceptable at all.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey. Do any members have any questions for Councillor Lacey? Councillor Foster.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, Councillor Lacey. You mentioned LC5 1C, which is what I was looking at.
Yeah.
And you've quoted about it must avoid significant loss of privacy and amenity for the residents of neighbouring properties. That's what it says. In your view, because I haven't been to that property and I've only seen it from the photos, so in your view, do those residents lose, is it a significant loss of privacy in your...
I believe so,
Because
yeah.
they can have a loss of privacy and they can have a loss of amenity, as officers will tell us, people can lose that. But I think that it's, for me, it's all about the definition. Do you regard it as significant in your view?
Yeah, I do.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any more questions? No, if you'd like to retake your seat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Right, the next speaker is Lisa Morton, who's an objector to the application. If you'd like to come to the speaker's chair, please. Okay, you have 3 minutes whenever you're ready. Thanks.
I live to the back of the house, kind of Katie cornered, next door to the one that's at the bottom of the garden. My picture is the one where you can just see the big industrial building. That's what it looks like. This actually makes me very depressed, very depressed. I've lived in this house nearly 30 years, and it makes it so that friends come and they'll go, bloody hell, look at the size of that thing. It's huge, and I don't see the point of it. Any planning, if you can do what you want and then get retrospective planning after you've done the fact, he's obviously got no regard for the planning system if he can just go ahead anyway and just do what he wants. You've said on your pictures that he's gone quite a bit above what he were allowed. So why apply for planning if you can do what you want? I've got a letter from my neighbour who's at the bottom of the garden. The height that this building was increased by is objecting to, and the fact that the building, the west elevation closer to the boundary, has blighted the whole outlook. This now confronts the properties on the west elevation. The plot has increased from a 2-bedroom bungalow in keeping with the dimensions of the surrounding properties to a monstrous 5-6 bedroom, very imposing building, which now encroaches on the outlook of every property surrounding it. Has anyone from planning visited and actually seen it? Because like Carol said, until you see it, you can't believe it. But the house, the estate was built on an old football field. I've lived in Killamarsh all my life, and it's on a slight incline. So from your pictures, it doesn't look as intrusive as it does from my end, because I'm at the bottom of the hill. And it really does. You just look at it, it's like living outside at Angel at North or Ground Zero. It's huge. It's not in keeping with surrounding properties. I worry that there's no soak away because he's took most at garden. It's just awful. It really is awful. It makes me so depressed, and it shouldn't be allowed. I've nothing against Mr. Dibble. I don't know the man. I see him walking his dog, that's it. But I just don't like what he's done. And then he's going to bugger off and live in Thailand and leave us with that thing. And I'm sorry, I just get very passionate about it. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Any members have any questions for the speaker? No? If you'd like to retake your seat. Thank you. Right, members, it is now time to ask questions of officers about the application. Did you want to just clarify some points on this first, Adrian?
Just to provide some guidance to members in terms of the issues before you this afternoon. You've heard from Mrs Morton there in respect of what has got planning consent and what is now being sought. And in terms of that, you can't row back from what's been granted permission, but what you're being asked this afternoon is to consider what's now been built on site, which exceeds, as Ken has pointed out, the approved scheme in terms of the height to the eaves and the height to the apex of the roof, and in terms of the windows in the roof, the roof lights. So that's the issue that you've got to consider in terms of the impact on the character of the area, and also in terms of the impact on the amenity of the neighbours, as you've heard Councillor Foster earlier on talk about. So those are the issues that you need to consider. The information that we've put on the screen is hopefully helpful in you making that judgment. But that's ultimately the judgment, Chair, that members need to take this afternoon. But if you need any further clarification on any issue that's been raised, Chair, we'll seek to advise and help.
Thank you, Adrian. Right, questions for officers? Open the floor. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Adrian, Ken, it does look a very imposing building. Obviously, I've only seen it on photographs. Where do you draw the line as what is and what isn't acceptable? Because, you know, to me, if I was living near to that, and just heard the speaker speak there about the incline, and it is a bit possibly misleading from those photographs. Where do you draw the line on something like this, and what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable?
That, Chair, is ultimately the judgment that you as members of Planning Committee need to take. And the issue about drawing the line in this instance, quite literally on the photograph that Ken showed you, is what has permission. So that is something that you can't row back on. What the applicant is seeking this afternoon is consideration of the addition. So he has what he's permitted, and that's gone. So you're not being asked to make a judgment on what's gone before you. What you're being asked to make a judgment on is what is before you this afternoon. And the issue that Councillor Cooper's raised there in respect of the impact on the neighbour is exactly what you're being asked to judge. And Ken has been on site, so he may be able to help you further in terms of the levels and how the sites relate. I've not had that luxury, but you need to satisfy yourselves either that the development is acceptable and won't have that significant impact on the neighbours, or that the additional works that have been done do take it in effect beyond that line. But that is the judgment that you will need to make this afternoon in terms of Planning Committee, and you'll need to come to a conclusion on that. I can't make that judgment for you, but hopefully we've given you all the information that you need to come to that judgment yourselves.
Councillor Foster, well, it's Councillor Jones first, sorry, and then you, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair.
In the previous report that was rejected last time, wasn't considered last time, and in the text of this report, you make reference to conditioning the windows. Now, the windows are there's a large number of windows, and there's the impact of overlooking, etc. In condition 2 of the previous report, you had a condition which was basically saying that you had obscure or non-opening windows in the north face of the property. That condition doesn't appear in this fresh report. And I wonder whether we should, in fact, condition some of the windows in terms of the obscure and non-open. Will that satisfy some of the problems? I don't know. Second question is, you've conditioned some of the windows in as much as no further windows are to be built over and above the windows in the roof. What about the gable end of that garage, the north end? There could be another window put there, particularly if that's a gym. there's a temptation to put a window on both sides. And I wonder whether you should in fact condition that out as well, or why you haven't conditioned it out. Thank you.
I think in terms of both things, the obscure glazing condition was indeed removed. You're correct, because it was assessed that there was not necessarily the potential for overlooking in terms of the structure, because they're in the roof, they're above you. If it's felt by members that you wish to, and you're minded to put in an obscure glazing condition, then that is actually fine. The same would follow with a condition removing any rights to put windows in the gable end of the garage, and yeah, that would also be fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. For me, I'd like to concentrate on LC5 1C, which I think is where officers are directing us to look at when it comes to making a decision on this. I guess that, yeah. And talk about the difference between the privacy and the amenity. The privacy is the windows that are overlooking. The amenity, I'm guessing, is the feeling that people will have with it being overbearing. And I know we've no longer got a right to a view, but with that being the difference between privacy and amenity, for me, when I look at it, it does look overbearing, even from the photos. And we've heard from councillors, and we've heard from a resident and witnesses that have brought written evidence that it's also, I don't think their words were overbearing, but that's the sense I've got from it. So privacy and amenity, the separation between those. So perhaps if you could give me an explanation about that, and confirm that it is what I'm thinking, the amenity and the privacy. And then the other point is to talk about it being significant. Now, for me, it looks significant when I look at it as it stands now. And it probably, looking at the difference in the dimensions which I've written down, it probably would have looked quite overbearing even before it came here on those old numbers. So the new numbers and how it looks on those photos certainly doesn't look significant to me. And also hearing evidence from witnesses, which is what we're supposed to take, they consider it significant as well in their view. So it's the view of officers, the view of us as members looking at these photos and considering it here, but the witness as well. So we've got three parties which are giving that opinion. Am I going down the right track when it comes to helping? So can officers help me here make the right decision? Am I looking at the right things when it comes to significant and when it comes to privacy and amenity? Because I'm looking at LC5. Thank you, Chair.
Just in terms first of the policy, yes, Councillor Foster, you read it as I do it. It's avoid significant loss of privacy and amenity for the residents of neighbouring properties. So in terms of privacy, yes, I'd agree that that's in terms of the outlook from windows or elevated land or those sort of issues. That would be privacy in terms of eyeballing your neighbour, and is that acceptable? In terms of amenity, then again, I'd agree that generally you're correct that it's a wider definition, but that does include overbearance and the impact of new development in its built form on a neighbour, and how that may impact both the dwelling house, the garden, the outlook. But as you quite rightly say, that wouldn't include a view, for example. So you couldn't say, I used to be able to see the mountains and now I can't. That wouldn't be part of that. But if you considered as a committee that the height of a wall, or in this case the height of a roof, was unacceptable and had an impact on that amenity, then that's what you would take into account. In terms of significant, that's a judgment, of course. Is it, in effect, is it unacceptable? And as I just said to Councillor Cooper, you can't consider what might have happened if nothing had taken place. What has been granted permission has been granted permission. But the additional impact of that, so in this case, the additional raising of the roof by the 40 centimetres and the additional bit of the apex of the roof would be matters that you would take into account, as you would the roof lights that are in that window. So the roof lights would be more privacy issues, although the perception of overlooking is something you could take into account. So the fact that they may not provide direct line, but you could have a perception of being overlooked is something you could take into account. But in this instance, yes, it's the additional height that you would take into account in terms of overbearance and the impact on the amenity from that point of view. But I can't help you in terms of what is significant or not. You would need to make that judgment whether the impact on the amenity is in effect unacceptable, the additional bit over and above what's been already granted permission. And I hope that helps.
Thank you, Chair. Nearly, perhaps if it covers most of it, but the last part about the three parties and their views. So it's been the views of officers that, as it stands before and as it stands now, that you don't think it's significant. We've heard from witnesses that they think it is significant, which is why I asked Councillor Lacey that question. And now we've got to decide on that. So just to confirm, we've got those three parties. Is that correct?
As with all these things, it's not a weighing up how many people think one and how you need to come to the planning judgment. But you've heard this afternoon of somebody who lives next door and their view, and therefore you need to weigh that up in coming to your view. And you've got the view of us as officers, and you need to take that into account in weighing that up. You've also got the photographs that you can relate to, but you need to come to that judgment yourself, not on a balance of how many people said one thing and how many people said another.
I weren't counting them.
Councillor Peterson.
I'm looking at the, lost it now myself, the windows. We're back on windows again, I'm afraid. The representations have said that they are bothered by the windows overlooking them. In the plans you've said that's okay because they all face skyward. Is that right? So it doesn't. So they don't overlook anybody.
It's not necessarily that they face skyward. It's that they're in the roof of the rooms that they serve.
Right. Now I have to speak from personal experience here. We have bought a house 5 years back. When we bought it, I could see a roof light in the ceiling, in the roof, obviously. No idea what it looked like because the actual roof was unboarded at the time. Now I've had that boarded, so I can go into the roof space, and I know that while that light is facing the same angle as these, I can see straight down into my neighbours' gardens and into their houses, if I so desire. So I understand their concern is those bottom lights, not the top ones, but the bottom ridge of lights. I can understand how they will feel that they're being overlooked by that. So what can we do about that one?
I just want to make clear that the bottom set of lights serve the ground floor.
No, we're talking about the roof lights now, please.
But yeah, the bottom,
the roof lights,
the bottom set of the roof lights, there are 6 together.
Yeah.
The top 3 serve the first floor that's been created. The bottom 3 serve the ground floor.
In the roof?
Yes.
I'm lost now. I thought
Effectively what you've got is you've got the dwelling like that, the roof goes there.
Yeah.
You have 3 roof lights that sit at the top part of that roof. So that side, those rooms are wider than the rooms above. So it's sort of like 2 bricks, one on top of the other. Is that, am I making?
No, I'm lost. I'm sorry. A roof is a roof to me.
So yeah, so basically you've got rooms like that.
Yeah.
Then you've got first floor rooms that sit there, and the slope of the roof comes down. So it's effectively like a dormer situation, but without the sticky out dormer, actual dormer physical shape. So those serve the ground floor rooms.
But they can still be looked through straight down onto their neighbours, is what I'm saying, because I know mine can. So they can still be even though they're at an angle, they can still look out over their neighbours' gardens and into their houses.
Yeah, it's what I'm trying to say is about the positioning. I mean, if you felt that the positioning was unacceptable, then then obviously we talked about the obscure glazing
Yes.
condition earlier,
Yeah,
and if you wish to impose that condition, then you could.
That's the answer.
Yeah, it'd have to be, wouldn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
Do any members have any further questions for officers?
No, I've got to mull this over.
No. Right, if there are no further questions, I'll open the floor to the debate. Who's going to start us off? Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Chair. I think this is, I'm going to be completely honest, because if this appeared at the bottom of my garden, I'd be mortified. But I think this is one of those situations where it's trying to shut the stable door after the horse has bolted. And dimension-wise, the building is actually smaller than what the existing planning is for. It's simply a case that the roof is higher. So I actually think if we didn't go with amended officers' recommendations, such as William suggested, I actually think they'd be in a worse position. So yeah, I can't say hand on heart I support it, but I think not supporting it would actually be worse for them.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Foster?
Yeah, I think from, as you probably gathered already, it looked the one that's been agreed looks overbearing anyway, because there's not that much difference to me. So it certainly looks overbearing as it is. The privacy thing is difficult to judge without actually being there on the spot. But it does look like there's a significant loss of privacy to me, and certainly, without a shadow of a doubt, there's a significant loss of amenity. That's my view. There's a significant loss as well. We've heard from residents. We've heard from the council that represents that area. The other thing I'd like to follow on from is what Councillor Cooper said about where do you draw the line. I didn't feel it was answered properly. I heard that question differently. Where do you draw the line? It feels to me like that the line wasn't drawn properly in the first place with the original permission. I don't understand we're not considering that here. I don't need it explaining a fourth time. Completely understand that. I know we're looking at this one as it stands. But I've come across this before, and I've come across it with Mr Huckle before in my own area in Colaston, and we've discussed this before about the loss of privacy. I feel there's not as much concern from officers generally towards our resident when it comes to loss of privacy and immunity. I think even as it first stood, there was a significant loss of privacy. I don't think enough's done for residents. We've heard that. We've heard from Mrs Morton about why we're not following a rule book when there is a rule book. And I know it's a grey area. I understand that. But still, I don't think it's been followed in this case. So I do think that line hasn't been drawn in the right place in the first time, and I don't feel it's been drawn this second time either. So this is a debate, and I can tell you how I'll be voting. I won't be voting for this to get planning permission, even though it's already built. This sort of thing can't continue happening to our residents. And when it comes to drawing a line, like Councillor Cooper said, it's at this point here on this committee where we draw the line. If officers don't draw the line where we think it should be drawn, then we have to draw that line at this committee. So I feel quite comfortable in not giving this permission because that line's been passed, and specifically because of LC5 1C, there has been a significant loss of privacy, but especially amenity. So that's my view. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Don't just turn your mic off.
Sorry.
Anybody else? Well, I'd like to contribute. I'm edging towards agreeing with Councillor Foster on this one. I think as we look at LC5 as it's written in respect of the scale and proportion, I think this additional scale and proportion that we've now got from the original accepted planning application certainly brings us into the part C of avoiding significant loss of privacy and amenity. So I'm struggling to support this application, I've got to admit. Right. No further members wanted to contribute? Oh, Councillor Hancock.
Yeah,
I know we've kind of passed the questions for officers, but just to make sure I've got these figures right, can you go back to the dimensions that you gave? Because what I've got, which is the bit why I'm not necessarily on the same. I agree with what Mark's saying. I'm just not there. We're talking really about an increase of 40 centimetres tall, but we're actually taking a significant amount off the length. Or did I note this? Did I note the figures down wrong when we were talking? I know we're in here somewhere without me going back. Yeah, if
Would you like me
please,
to?
Ken.
I'll repeat them in full. Is it just the dwelling, or do you want the garage as well? Okay. So height to ridge, previously approved 6.4, as built 6.6. Height to eaves, previously approved 2.4, as built 2.8. Length 19.8, as built 17.3. Width remains the same.
So we've lost 2.5 metres in length.
Yeah, you've also, bear in mind, you've got the atrium, which was 2 metres in both cases. In terms of the garage then, ridge 5.2, as built 5.4. Eaves 2.6, as built 2.9. Length 8.9, as built 6.1. Width 8.6, as built 5.3.
So actually, the scheme that's already approved would be significantly more imposing than what's here now, than what's in front of us now.
It would have a larger footprint,
Yeah.
but it would have lower ridge and eaves.
But we're talking 20 centimetres, aren't we? It's not actually 40 centimetres, it's 20 centimetres.
It's
up to the roof height.
0.4
6.4 to 6.6.
0.4 at eaves, 0.2 at ridge.
Yeah. Cheers.
Councillor Foster.
Yeah, just on that point, just because that had been given, I understand how you've explained it, just because it's been given permission at 6.4, the height to ridge, 2.4 to eaves, and we're now 6.6 and 2.8, just because that's been given permission before, that doesn't mean it wasn't overbearing before, and it wasn't, for me, in my view, against LC51C. It doesn't mean that. I'm looking at this, I'm considering this as it stands, 6.6, yeah? And I would have looked at it before, at 6.4, I would have considered it overbearing then.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it as it's 6.6. Chair, thank you.
Just on that point, Chair, the issue we've set that out is that would be what we would call the fallback position. That's been granted permission, and as we've already discussed, that you can't take that away. So it's the additional taking into account that's the fallback position that is authorised on the site. That's the reason we've set those measurements out for members.
Is everyone clear? Councillor Peters? No, it's not, sorry.
Yeah, I'm really struggling with this actually, because I do think it is overbearing. But as everyone's been saying, the original application was really. And I suppose I'm thinking, are we just sort of trying to put a stop to people not building to what they've been granted? I mean, obviously we've seen this before. In this case, it's quite a small amount. I mean, I don't know, I think it does look overbearing, I think, as everybody's said, but I can't see that the original building wouldn't have, and possibly would be worse. I don't know what to do about this, actually.
Can I just add to what, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, can I just add to what Adrian has said? So you've already approved a planning permission, which is 6.4. So today what you are considering, that for example, 6.6, that extra, does that mean now they have loss of privacy and amenity? And if that answer to that is yes, that's a reason for refusal. However, if you're looking at, well, the original planning permission should have been refused, then that would not be a valid reason, and we're opening ourselves up to judicial review on that.
Councillor Foster.
I don't know if it's just me, but I've had explained that explained 6 times. It's quite clear first time round that, if I'm honest. I don't mind it being explained a 7th time, but if it starts to look like a debate, like you're putting this and trying to persuade us to do something different, you know, that can't happen. I understand it, yeah, and I'm sure other councillors do now. It can't be a debate with officers. Thank you, Chair.
I think they're just putting it there as a point of clarity, I think. Just a point of clarity, I think that's. I don't think they're trying to make it turn it into a debate with you.
I'm not signing anyone.
Yeah. Right, we'll not listen to that again then.
Can I ask one more point of clarity?
Yes, go on then.
No. I just want to get this straight in my head, which I know the answer, but I just want to be absolutely 100%, because obviously these people haven't followed the rules, which is part of the problem here. If we approve this today with these reduced width and length dimensions, they cannot go back to making it. They can't stick that extra 2 metres back on, can they, without coming back here?
That will be correct, Chair,
Yeah.
And I stand to be corrected by Ken here, unless there is other permitted rights that they could use.
Yeah, no, that's my concern, Chair, is that what's already approved is probably more imposing, and I think until they've started building this, people haven't realised how big it is and what the impact on the neighbour is. And I'm with Christine. I think it's a really tough one, but my concern is if we don't approve this, we reject this, they're going to get. Yes, it may not be. It's going to be like that much shorter, but it's actually a bigger building that's going there. Sorry.
Thank you. Right, I am now going to open the floor to motions. Have we got any motions in front of us? No. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hancock.
Chair, I'm going to move that we accept officer recommendations, but with the amendments that William suggested about the obscure glazing and not allowing the window in the gable end on the north side.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the best thing we can do to protect the residents.
That's all we can.
I think it's
Thank you. Right, we have a motion to accept with the conditions of secure glazing. Was that including the gable end of the garage?
Yes. Yeah, both of those amendments.
Can I interrupt? Can I say that the obscure glazing needs to be on the south side as well? That bungalow on the south side is incredibly close to that wall.
I think all those roof
all of them on that level. Yes, thank you.
Chair, may I just ask one point of clarity? The discussion that we had was regarding obscure glazing and non-opening. You've only mentioned obscure glazing in that. I just need to be sure.
Right, we've got a proposal on the floor and seconded, so we're going to put that to the vote. Is that everybody? Right, that has been carried. 4 for the motion, 3 against and 1 abstention. Thank you, members. Right, I'll just wait for the members of the public to leave and we'll move on to this next item on the agenda.
Shall I go and get Councillor Lacey back? Oh, if you could, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. We'll just go and get so.
I think Donna's got lost. Right then members, we'll move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is TPO 302/2024 Sherland. The next item is in respect of tree preservation orders on land south of Hullfieldgate Lane, Sherland. So I'm going to hand over to David Cunningham.
Marty, you can just put on the presentation again, Chair, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Committee. Item 6 is the proposed confirmation of TPO 302 at land south of Hallfieldgate Lane, Sherland. The first slide, Adrian. Slide 1 shows the location of the site and describes the field pattern at land south of Hallfieldgate Lane, so it's just south of the red marker there. The site comprises 3.95 hectares of agricultural land across the 4 fields. The western site boundary abuts Hallfieldgate Farm, which notes the start of the Hallfieldgate Conservation Area. Pit Lane is to the east of the site, and Sherland Golf Club is to the south. The agricultural fields within the site are divided and bound by hedgerows. These hedgerows include several mature trees grown as individuals or within small groups. Views into the site can be gained from Hallfieldgate Lane and footpath NE 1633-1, which exits Pit Lane and enters Sherland Golf Club. Outline approval for the development of 90 dwellings at the site was granted at appeal, and the site is currently pending a decision on reserve matters for agreement of appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. Tree Preservation Order 302 was made in its provisional form on the 22nd of August 2024 and protects 8 individual trees and 3 groups of trees within the site. The effect is that the order applies for 6 months or until confirmed or modified. The next slide, please. The second slide shows the map annexed to the TPO 302, and this describes the location of protected trees within the site. Before deciding to confirm an order, the local authority must take into account all duly made objections and representations that have not been withdrawn. One duly made objection has been received and no representations of support have been received. The objection raised 6 points for consideration, and these are detailed from 3.2 to 3.7 within the report. The Council's tree officers provide a response to each point raised within the objection, and these are found from 4.2 to 4.7 within the report. At the time when the objections were received and whilst the officer report was being prepared for this committee, the site was subject to 2 further appeals. The first appeal was to vary conditions pertaining to approved plans, temporary access and highway improvement works as allowed at the original appeal. The second was an appeal for the proposed footway extension to the north of number 43 Hallfield Gate Lane. Both appeals are mentioned within the officer report and relate to several of the issues raised within the objection, but both appeals have now been allowed, however they do not alter the officer recommendation. The Council's tree officer believes that there is a foreseeable threat to trees on land south of Hallfield Gate Lane from development pressure. This would likely result in the loss of trees should TPO 302 not be confirmed in the interests of amenity. It is the officer's recommendation to confirm TPO 302, the trees on land south of Hallfield Gate Lane, Sherland, without modification. Can I have the next slide, please, Adrian? So slide 3 shows the proposed layout submitted in support of the Reserve Matters application, and then there are a few more slides showing the photographs of the actual trees. So slide 4 shows group 1 and 2, which are protected by the order. Slide 5 shows tree 1 and 2, which are protected by the order, and slide 6 shows tree 5 and 6, which are protected by the order. There are a couple of other trees, but I didn't include those photographs. That concludes my introduction. Thank you, Chair.
Right, it's now time to ask questions of officers about the TPO. Has anybody got any questions they want to raise? You're escaping lightly. If there are no further questions, I will open the floor to a debate. Right, I am now open the floor to motions.
I move that we follow officer recommendations on this one, Chair.
I'll second that. Right, if we can put that to the vote to accept officer recommendations, please. That's everybody.
That's everyone now.
Yeah, it wouldn't have made a difference anyway. Right, that's been approved. Thank you very much. Right, we now move on to item 7, which is planning appeals. I will now ask officers to run through the next report. Appeals determined. Up to you, Adrian.
Thank you, Chair. Members will see page 37 onwards as an outline of the appeals that have been lodged and determined since the last meeting. You'll see there's 4 more appeals that have been lodged, which follow the steady stream of appeals that we continue to receive. 2 of those relate to a single site at Ridgeway, so that would be a conjoined appeal in respect of that particular aspect of development. In terms of the appeals allowed, 2 of those that have been allowed relate to the ones that David has just referred to in in respect of the TPO at Horfield Gate Lane. So they were both allowed, and they do make interesting reading, but the Pine Groves Caravan Park site was an appeal determined against refusal to grant a lawful development certificate. It does take some unravelling, but again, it's quite interesting from a legal planning point of view. So, as always, recommend that to you. And then there were the 4 dismissed appeals, which again follow on the good work that's been done on appeals generally over the past 12-18 months. And again, there were a couple of appeal decisions there that relate to extensions in the Greenbelt, which again carry on the good run of results that we've had in respect of extensions in the Greenbelt, and then the other 2 in relation to advert consent and the change of use of the allotment at Stonebroom are interesting in their own right. In terms of the Stonebroom appeal, it's in relation to the loss of allotments in the district, and again it is interesting from that point of view that support's been given to your policy that seeks to retain allotments and other open spaces against inappropriate, in this case, housing development. So again, it makes interesting reading. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any members have any questions on the report? Right, do we all agree to note to the report by acclamation? Thank you. Right, item 8 is matters of urgency. I have no urgent business, so I declare the meeting closed. I'm just going to let everyone have a 5-minute comfort break before we move into the report on the new MPP.